at no point in time will it ever be the perfect time to jump and to go all in on it. Everything either breaks or will break from that.
You're in the safe job. Yes, the world fell apart, but you're like, my job's still safe. Why walk away?
If there's an idea that you're beginning to constantly lose sleep over, buckle up, because it's not even just the undulations of the entire journey. It's like the undulations of the hour.
Some founder stories are clean arcs. Today's guest has lived just about every version of the journey. Chieh Huang is a third-time plus founder whose career reads like a case study in every possible thing that can happen in a startup. The accidental exit, the venture rocket ship, the celebrated culture, the SPAC IPO, the public company grind, the bankruptcy, the pivot back, and now the next act. He started out as a corporate attorney at Proskauer Rose, walked away from big law, and moved into a friend's mom's attic in New Jersey to build a mobile game company called AstroApe, which got acquired by Zynga in 2011. In 2013, he co-founded Boxed, which is essentially Costco for millennials out of a garage. His TED Talk, Confessions of a Recovering Micromanager, has been watched millions of times and is required viewing in a lot of management courses. And today, together they're building Pelago, an AI-native outplacement platform priced at $40 per employee per month, disrupting the incumbent industry, which charges $1,000 to $27,000. So Chieh, welcome to Entrepreneurial Excellence. So the first question I'd like to get started with everybody when we start our conversation is, how do you define entrepreneurial excellence? Like, what does it actually mean to be a great entrepreneur? Someone who's founded multiple companies, gone through so many ups and downs. What does it mean to be an excellent entrepreneur?
Wow, I've never been asked that question. It's a hard one. I feel like from the inside out, I don't know if anyone truly feels like, if you gave them truth serum, feels like they are an excellent entrepreneur. Maybe some, but in reality, we're all, in some ways, it's like a practice. It's like you're trying to get better because at the end of the day, you're dealing with business situations, people. And so can you really master that art form? I don't think so, because there's so many variables. But I do think you can, some days you feel like an excellent entrepreneur. And I think those are the days where you're like, wow, like from the inside out, I'm doing what I love and what I think I'm fairly good at. And those days, I feel like not only is entrepreneurship excellent, but maybe I am excellent for that little kind of snippet of time.
Yep, fair enough. And, yeah, having those little moments where you're like, I'm great, is better than nothing to some extent.
And then truth be told, as you know, it's like that could be before lunch. And then like after lunch, you get another email. You're like, wow, this is over.
We maybe can get into this if we have time. I'd be curious your take on it, but we actually had something interesting happen with my company yesterday. On Monday, we announced a revamp of our compensation plan, like in what I thought was a really positive way, like super positive way. We then had a kind of team discussion about it earlier in the morning, all this other stuff. And then at the end of the day, and like, by the way, I'm fairly jet lagged, got off a really long flight on Sunday, all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, my sort of head of all of our operations said, hey, one of our senior people gave notice because they're so frustrated by this plan. And I was like, this is literally like, it's literally all upside. I do not understand it. It's like beyond me. Like, I clearly failed as a leader to explain it properly. There's other things that maybe went wrong, but I'm just like gut punch. I'm like, wait, we're literally just massively increasing how much people can make. And then this occurs. And I reach out to the person. I don't understand it. They gave us like 2 months notice. So you're going to figure things out. But I'm like, what is going on there? I don't fully, I don't get it. It's one of those things that it's a roller coaster.
As long as folks kind of listening to this know that it's like, if you're not an entrepreneur today, just, I know it sounds very cliche at this moment. By this time, it's like, buckle up, because it's not even just the undulations of the entire journey. It's like the undulations of the hour. And as long as you put one foot in front of the other, generally, I think it's okay. And the skill where you're learning, like, it makes you an excellent anything else, like in business. And so yeah, I'm preaching to the choir, obviously, but
no, you're so right. Like learning every day. And yes, it was actually funny. I was thinking through all things yesterday. It was a roller coaster. Like, oh, this happened. Then I would reach out to another person on the team who had something happen personally, and I had to reach out to her, send a personal message. Then another thing with another. Then we're negotiating sort of a legal situation with someone else, and I just always I don't love the legal situations. There to negotiate those things, and like, I don't know, it's like one thing after the next. Anyways, so go back to your origin, right? So you went to Fordham Law School, right? Johns Hopkins undergrad, landed as a corporate attorney at one of the top law firms out there. Super safe, high status job, all the other things, probably like your Asian American parents were like, heck yeah, I'm like so proud of our son. He, it's either doctor or lawyer. Good job. Congratulations. You made us proud. And then you decided to walk away. Why? And how did your parents feel?
Well, before that, after college, I taught English in countryside Japan for a good 2 years.
You're from Taiwan, right?
From Taiwan, a little bit of Japanese as well. My grandmother was Japanese. And so, but I didn't speak Japanese before going to Japan. And so it's a little bit of finding my roots and also going off on a side quest after college. And so went out there for a few years, went over, but then coming back, I went to law school, graduated law school, went to a law firm on my starting day was September 15th, 2008, about exactly 9 or 9.5 hours after Lehman Brothers collapsed,
Yeah.
and my office was across the street from their office, and so I'll never forget, my mom bought me, like, a new briefcase, I bought a new suit, new shoes, rest of my professional life was gonna start. I walk out of the subway station, Times Square, and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, like, why are there thousands of people with bankers boxes, like, clogging up traffic?" And you realize, like, that's what happened, and it was, like, unceremonious, everyone had to clean their stuff out, and it was nuts, so that was my welcome to corporate America.
Great. You're in the safe job. Yes, the world fell apart, but you're like, my job's still safe. Everyone needs bankruptcies. You need even more lawyers. So it's a win for lawyers when bankruptcies occur. Why walk away?
There's 2 main reasons. I thought, when I looked at a law firm and being a lawyer, it can be incredibly rewarding, like both monetarily as well as kind of, fulfillment, moral fulfillment. When I first looked at the monetary side of things, I looked at who was making kind of the big bucks in a law firm, and it was clearly all the corner office partners.
Yep.
And then when you at least at the firm I was at, you start to break down who grew up at the law firm and who made it from where I was all the way to that corner office, as the numerator, and then you put the denominator of how many people went before them. I was like, man, not not the carnival game that has the best odds in the world, that's for sure. And so that was one. The second was also fulfillment wise. Like, I found fulfillment in the business side of things and less so the legal side of things. Like, I found myself staying after late, after the deal was done or after my assignment was done, not charging the hours, but reading the bios of the exec and how they got to where they were. And so I just felt like moral fulfillment, academic fulfillment didn't lie firmly in the law. And so those were the two things that drove me to leave.
I can. I know that it's just so funny the parallels. So I just almost have to say, like, literally the same. I literally had a conversation with the head of HR at the company I was working at. It was a mid-sized publicly traded company. I said, "How long is it going to take me to reach my boss's position?" And in a nice way, right? But they were like, "Oh, it's about 20 years." And I was like, "But if they leave and then come back with a new title, I'll get a bunch of bumps up." They're like, "Yeah, that's how it works." Okay, this is really interesting. And so I was just like, this is not going to work. And then the other part was when I was doing my legal internships, I was working at a big law firm, and literally I remember staying late, like moving commas around because the customer was like, "I don't like the way this sounds."
Yeah.
And I was like, this sucks. I want to be a customer telling the lawyers where to move the commas, not being like the guy staying late at night because some stupid business person who doesn't know where commas should go is telling me what to do. I want to be the stupid business person. So it's sleeper with you on that. Okay. So, but still, like, that's a ballsy move, right? To be like, I'm going to piece out of this like safe corporate job.
Yeah, and, that got me in a mindset of like, "Okay, what else is out there?" I didn't quit cold turkey. So at that time, I know I'm dating myself now. It's like, well, I did already. It's like '08, '09, '08, '07. The first iPhone came out. '08, it was gaining traction. By '09, it was like, I was like, this is going to be a thing. A few friends that I had known that I had grown up with, they quit their jobs cold turkey to form this gaming company, this mobile gaming company that was going to take Facebook games and port them to the iPhone, because we're like, wait, connectivity is no longer an issue. Like, this sounds crazy, but 3G internet with the iPhone 3G, like, you can connect fast enough to play these games. And then the processing power for some of these games, you can get there. Like, and so we're like, why don't we make similar games on the iPhone? And they convinced me to quit my job and join the CEO of that company right before launch. So
Why did they want you as like what made you a qualified CEO of a gaming startup? Being a like being someone who went into corporate law.
I I I don't know, man. I think it's like sometimes, when you're starting out, it's not you don't have access to like the world. And so it's like, I think they were like, we trust Chieh, and seems decently smart, probably save a few bucks on the legal bill because he can do a lot of it himself. And those two guys weren't like all about business, so they were like, get him on board. I felt incredibly unqualified as well. But you know, I did feel qualified that I knew what I liked in gaming. But as a CEO, to go from like a individual contributor law firm associate to a CEO is a big jump.
So walk me through that jump a little bit, in especially, but in more than just the jump, like because from my research, right, you guys moved into what your friend's mom's attic.
Yeah.
Like, what were those first 6 months like? And maybe apply that not just to the first 6 months for Office Heroes, right? Or that was one of the big games. Is it different for startups today, or is it still the same? It's like you're moving into, a garage, attic, and like what were the key things that happened the first 6 months that helped you sort of take it off, or is it just like surfing the wave at the right time?
I think there's certainly surfing the wave at the right time. I just met with someone yesterday, and he said it's either luck or intentional serendipity.
But you make your own luck, right? You all decided we see 3G coming. The iPhone is huge. Games on Facebook are big. Let's combine these together. Not everyone is willing to take that risk, even if I mean, I missed out. I remember Facebook showing up. I was one of the first schools that got Facebook in college. And I was like, this is amazing. And I was reading all the tech stuff. And instead, I went to law school instead of moving to Palo Alto and just showing up at like the Facebook house and be like, I will do whatever you need me to do. This is huge.
I do agree with that, right? Like, we're in World Cup season, so it's like a deflected goal is still a goal. Like, yeah, people will say you're lucky, but it's like, when you look at the scoreboard, it's.
But you were in the right place to deflect it.
Exactly. If you didn't kick the ball, if you didn't shoot it, like there would have been no deflection. And so I do think, I guess you're asking for like, is it the same today?
Yeah, like walk us through the first 6 months, and is it kind of the same with the other three companies you've started?
Oh, it's because like as you have more access to capital, you have more access, you know what you need, what you don't need, second and third time around, and access to talent. But first time starting out, I do think that era was a little bit different. There was probably more garage kind of folks. Nowadays there's like WeWorks, Industrious, there's so probably a lot more co-working space. It's like the modern garage, I think.
Yeah.
But definitely kind of it's still the same. It is the fact that at no point in time will it ever be the perfect time to jump and to go all in on it. Folks try to, and sometimes you see this, it's like, it's this asymptotic kind of entrepreneurial career where they have the idea, but if they just have one more customer, then they'll go full time. And it's like, oh, and it's kind of working out, but then the next idea comes and so they never make that jump. I have to say that like, that's probably the same. And that jump is never going to be comfortable in a net, no matter what generation of entrepreneur you are.
So we talk about, obviously this is about being an excellent entrepreneur to an extent. What do you think though enabled you and other entrepreneurs that who've been really successful to make that jump? Like why were you different and willing to take that chance?
I would say some people were pushed, some people jumped themselves, but you're still falling through the sky. So for some folks, it could be a job disruption, like you got laid off. I personally think there's going to be a boom of solopreneurs now that we have so many tools, and you're just seeing kind of more and more, at least white collar folks, kind of be displaced. So I do think there's going to be a boom of solopreneurs that were actually a little bit pushed off. But at the same time, there are other folks that actually jump because they feel like they have the idea. For me, my kind of, I guess, rubric for thinking about it is that if there's an idea that you're beginning to constantly lose sleep over, that you're just sitting up wide awake at night and thinking, how could no one else see this? And if you think to yourself that if someone didn't make this a thing, I truly could not live with myself after that because that idea is top of mind for me, then I kind of think, at least from a moral perspective, it's time. And then from a financial perspective, we always talk about company runway, but in reality, a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about personal runway. So before I made that first leap, I made sure I had a year I was single at the time. So it was easier to save like a year of expenses, of like emergency expenses. But then it made me feel at least when I jumped, I had a full year to give it a try. And so if I sat in a rocking chair 60 years from that day, I'd be like, no, I gave it a full try. Versus like, I gave it a try for 4 weeks. I'm like, oh, savings are tight. I better get another job and then do it part-time again. Then you're right back into where you started.
Totally agree. And I would argue, and tell me if this resonates as well, that anyone who thinks they could be a good entrepreneur is probably good enough to find employment again if they need to, right? It might not be the perfect job, but it's like the downside is not that like especially being in America, being like there's lots of jobs overall, like yes, not as many as there were, other et cetera. And you obviously know a lot of that with Pelago, but like the the downside isn't that risky. If you believe you were that good to start a company, then you're probably good enough to get hired somewhere too.
I couldn't agree more. And you're building, it's not like you're atrophying. In fact, you're supercharging your skill set because you go into any industry. Oh my gosh, like they're like dog years as an entrepreneur. So like if you're an entrepreneur in that industry for 3 years, oh my gosh, you probably have the equivalent of 2 decades of knowledge of
Yep.
that industry, all the machinations of how it works, how the money flows, who's happy, who's not, and the network in that industry. You're right. Like if you stay in that industry, most likely someone out there will have respected the hustle and the knowledge base and they'll put you in there. Will they put you in as COO? Maybe, maybe not, but you'll be able to pay the bills most likely in that.
Exactly. Hence your downside is capped. So I know we're going to do a very abbreviated version of many of these questions that I would love to ask, but okay, you guys build this amazing mobile game, get
Yep.
acquired by Zynga. Um, what like take me through like you got this exit to Zynga. Most people would take that money, angel invest, coast a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. You then kind of, I don't know how quickly it was, but fairly quickly started.
I suspected I had the entrepreneur bug, and then after I kind of scratched the itch, it was like, oh man, I full on caught the entrepreneur bug. So it was such an exhilarating experience, and then maybe a little bit of a biased sample set, but our first one was such a success that I was like, man, I found. Luckily, I was 30 at that time, late 20s. I was like, I finally found in my late 20s, and maybe that's early for some, maybe it's late, but I found what I was good at, what I truly enjoyed in life, and luckily the third part of the Venn diagram was what could also make some money. That's it. This is my calling professionally in life.
You just felt like can't stay at Zynga because Zynga was also on a crazy upward trajectory. I mean, it was an amazing rocket ship as well. Why jump off of that rocket ship?
We just felt like we got to go all over again because in some ways, like at that time, as Zynga went public, it started feeling a little bit more corporate,
Mm,
and I was like, oh, this is kind of starting to be the reason why I left
yeah.
corporate America. So yeah, it was a calling, and we felt like at that time we were, it was all digital. We were kind of selling digital collectibles, making games. We were like, let's do something physical. Let's go into e-commerce with fulfillment centers and inventory. And it's like, oh, if I could go back in a time machine and shake that person and be like, "What are you thinking?"
And in theory, it sounded great. And we did talk about the journey of Box too, but in theory, that sounded great. And you went public with it, right? And had some real things happen. So okay, so you're like, I'm gonna go start this new thing, get off the Zynga rocket ship. It's being corporate. Although I know you joke about Box, I think becoming pretty corporate too, and you becoming the person you didn't would
Yeah.
be. Okay, so Box, you have this idea. You have three co-founders. Like, what was the co-founder dynamic? Like, how did you make that work? And that was over what 8+ years, almost 10 years, I think, of
Oh, it was
Box.
10 plus years. Yeah, we had 4 total co-founders, so me and 3 other ones. So it was, 3 original folks from our first gaming company, plus our employee number 1, co-founded Boxed. And so, yeah, it was wild, man. Like, we went back to the garage. This time, instead of that my co-founder's mom's attic, we went to, like, my parents' garage and, like, just usurped their garage as our fulfillment center. And a lot of days, we'd have no orders. We'd just sit there, and it was, like, cold as hell in the garage. So we sit there and then get the fireplace going, and my dad would cook us scones. It was, like, in some ways, like, heartwarming, and other ways, I'm like, "Man, if people in my law firm saw this, they'd be like, 'Dude, what is this guy doing?'"
Yeah, we're sitting here in our fancy corporate offices.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, intentional serendipity, luck, whatever you wanna call it. So it got off to a really slow start, Box, but then, as luck would have it, one of the contributors on the Today Show, had used the service, loved it. She was, like, one of our, like, 100 customers that we had,
Wow.
and then said, "I'm going on Today's Show tomorrow or in a few days. If you drop off samples at 30 Rock, like, I'll talk about it. I'll do this whole segment on it. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Is it an IQ test? Are we getting hacked? Who's ever said no?"
Yeah.
And sure enough, they talked for like 3, 4 minutes about it with all the things set up. Hoda and Kathy Lee were like, "This is genius. You're saving gas. You're saving money." And then I couldn't believe it. We're watching TV because we didn't have any other orders. And then it's so cliche, but like as soon as they were talking about it, I was like, you look over at this like lap or PC that we had, it was like, oh my gosh, the orders are coming in, and that was our big start.
That's crazy. Were there any key elements? Okay, so you get this started right. So you go from in the garage to then 1,000 employees. Like, What breaks? Where did it break? Or how many times, maybe extra state, how many times did it break? And what were
Oh
some
my
of the big
gosh.
breaking points?
From garage to 1,000, basically everything breaks. The reality is, like, it's just like everything either breaks or will break from that journey, and it's just either do you have the time and the knowledge and the foresight, to fix it before it breaks. Oftentimes, like, you can't. You're just, like, running a million miles a minute, then you just can't. You gotta stress it out until it breaks, and then you gotta then it becomes top of mind for you that morning before something else breaks in the afternoon. But I'd say there's so much, engineering, like, folks talk about tech debt a lot. So it's like you're building all these things, especially with vibe coding these days. There's so much tech debt in like what's being vibe coded. Over time, you probably need a hackathon to clean it all up and like make it kind of scalable for the next leg. But not enough people talk about I'd say management debt of like, oh, we had all these wild systems, compensation programs, and like these one-off agreements that like, and that just it's like this big ball of spaghetti. And it just never gets unwound sometimes, and that certainly broke multiple times, that box.
And how do you keep the team aligned, right? I mean, you did a lot of stuff for culture as well. How do you keep a
Mm.
team aligned through that growth and change? Because I've seen historically that people are pretty bad at change. In fact, they find it
Yeah.
very challenging to go through it. And to me, what's sort of funny is if like you sign up to work at a startup, most startups, it's either a rocket ship ride, like what you guys went through, or you go through a rocket ship, your rocket ship fails and it sort of blows up and it goes down where it basically falls to pieces on the ground. And that's all change all the time. And yet people still get frustrated by change. Like
Yeah.
how do you manage that mindset?
I don't blame them because I feel like because going back to the thing of dog years, being an entrepreneur, like if you're there for 3 years and at any startup, especially in the early days, it probably feels like you were there for like over a decade.
Yeah.
And so even though it doesn't feel like 3 years in any job, you don't feel entrenched yet, like at a normal job. But in a startup, you feel like, oh, this is the way we did it. This is the way we did it when it was like Chieh and 10 other people in the office. Like, why would we change that? And they feel invested into it and in some way nostalgic for those days. I found that a lot. It's like there was a lot of nostalgia. As we went public, all the early folks would gather around. And even today, like when there's reunions of kind of folks I've worked with in the past, it's just all about nostalgia. And I think that nostalgia, there's a fine line between that and like being stuck in your ways.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, not everyone has that growth mindset, including me at certain times of that journey.
And so at Box, you go public. I know you had like Amazon, Walmart trying to buy you and compete with you and all these other things. You have the successful public. First of all, why did you say no to acquisitions from some of these big guys in the first place? And then we need to talk about the bankruptcy as well. So walk me through like what, how does a founder decide to say no?
10% of me thought that we're onto something because those offers started coming pretty early. I think our first ever acquisition overture came from a retailer probably 6 months after we launched. And so I just felt, in some ways, it bolsters your confidence that, okay, I'm onto something if folks think what we're doing is desirable. But actually, there was a lot, so that's 10%. The other part of it, it's investor dynamics. For anyone listening to this and you haven't taken money, one of the things that you have to understand about taking money, it's not all, I know we glorify it and it's like, you have big investors, someone raised $10 billion. But guess what? Like you raise $10 billion, investors want 100 billion back. Like, and it's you got to 10x the company plus dilution. And I think so as you begin to raise the valuation of the company, it goes off into a land that's super attractive for some, but absolutely horrific for others. Even though for 99% of external viewers, it'd be like, take that money and run. You can't because people have veto rights, people have votes, there's politics. It just, part of that happens.
There's probably something to be said that both of us being, fairly experienced entrepreneurs, both are bootstrapped. I mean, Pelago, I think maybe has some small investors or something, but like generally
Yeah.
bootstrapped.
It's like a tiny bit of money compared to what we raised at Box. So we want to get some traction before we think about going bigger.
Yeah. So bootstrap gives you a lot more control. And it means you can have an exit that's really good for everyone, but not worry about investors who are don't investors. What people don't really get, tell me if you agree with this, but like investors don't really care about your individual company. And certainly not the same way you do. Because they made 10, 20, 50 bets. And they're like, I want all of them to go to either 100 or go to 0. And I don't really care in between. Whereas for a founder, if you have something in between, it can still be life changing.
Oh,
To make sense.
totally. Think like for any founder out there, think about like if you own a public portfolio of a basket of 60 stocks, are you really listening to all 60 earnings calls every quarter? Probably not. Probably you're going to pick out the ones that are just like on fire and you're like, oh, I better dial into this one to see what the deal is here. And then the ones that are like doing okay or the ones that are not doing so well, you're probably thinking sell or like, okay, like don't call me, I'll call you. And that's the same thing with VCs. I don't blame them. It's their business model.
Yeah, but it's not aligned with founders in a lot of cases, and so people should think
Right.
carefully.
Oftentimes it is, but oftentimes it's not. And yeah, I just think, and it's totally, I think now this is my third company. I realize that like they've got a business to run, nothing personal at all. It's not like they don't think you're a good person. They've got a business to run, just like you're making business decisions. They're making them about you as well. Except the only bad thing is that for you as an entrepreneur, this is the only business decision. This is your main thing. But for them, it might be a basket of literally 30, 40 companies in that sleeve of capital.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So, okay, so Box goes public, then SVB has their complete meltdown. You guys go bankrupt, what, like 3 weeks later or something?
Dude, what a crazy time, man. Like, so we were doing a workout with one of our big shareholders and debt holders, and then SVB goes under. Like, our main operating account is at SVB. I just remember our CFO being like, dude, like they're going under. There's rumors they're going under, like, and people are lining up in front of the office. They're like, what should we do? I was like, I can't believe you're not like, we're going lining up right now. Fit for badge and we're going there. Like, and so what a turbulent time, man. It was, a great learning experience.
So, so, so play the alternative for me for a second. Like, had SVB not gone under,
Yeah.
would Box have had a different outcome?
Mm, I can't say definitively, but it certainly doesn't help raise the certainly doesn't help like raise the confidence of anyone around the table when like suddenly things like this happen. It's just like, oh my gosh, like what's next? Perhaps. Because I think the saving grace is that our software business was starting to gain some momentum and that was a highly profitable business.
Mm.
There were starting to be real shoots there of success and kind of profit potentially. And it would have bought us a little bit more time. So, but who knows? Like hindsight's 2020, right? So
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. So I want to talk about culture at Box a little bit too, because you did some really cool things there at that Box, right? So I think you said you're going to pay the college tuition of every full-time, fulfillment employee for their kids. You would pay up to $20,000 towards a full-time employee's wedding.
10,000.
10,000. And then like that costs real money, right? It's off the balance sheet, it has implications. Like, how did you justify doing things like that? What was the ROI? Why did you make decisions along those lines? And how did that play into the overall culture thought process at Boxed?
We had like all these programs that it wasn't like, oh, if you can from the outside in, you could say, well, I wasn't getting married. I don't have kids going to college. Then what's in it for me? We also had actually probably the most popular, internally, the most popular program was this $500 emergency fund. So we employed like over the course of Box, probably like tens of thousands of people. Like, and it's like for a lot of Americans out there, if you suddenly provide them with a bill of $500 or more, they can't pay it.
It's like 40% of Americans who don't have $500.
Yeah, exactly. And so for us, it's like, all right, like as long as you have bona fide evidence of it and you've been here a certain amount of time, like, yeah, like that should be something we help you cover. And what we found is that we had very little turnover compared to most fulfillment centers, and our efficiency was incredibly high. So, you do the math at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do, made us all feel good, but you also back it up with math of just like, you pull all these programs, you treat them like cogs, we lower their health insurance or take away like health insurance for those that like technically by law weren't qualified for it. And you take away these programs. Yeah, you can save some money, but if they start treating the company like a cog and start turning over, you got to retrain people. I think that's like a way worse financial decision, and you feel bad.
Yeah, I mean the numbers I remember running at one point. This is my first job, was around like turnover and how much that costs the company, and like the expenses of turnover and losing people, and so finding ways to reduce that is one of the things that people don't. It's very easy, like, oh, it costs this money, let's lower this amount or change this, and instead trying to say, hey, how do we actually pay people more or give them better benefits and make this worth their while to stick around for the long term?
Exactly. So what is there's like math, there's all different studies, right? There's like some that say it's what, like equivalent of 3 months salary, some say equivalent of 6 months salary. That's like blatant cost to the business. Cause when you hire someone, they're not fully up to speed and dangerous for at least like 90 days,
Correct.
in reality. And so there's that cost. And then also probably a little bit more on point to my day job today. At Pelago, we try to help treat folks right on the way out on behalf of companies. What you also find is that like the survivor guilt and people who see their colleagues leave and not get treated well, there's a productivity hit for sure for the remainers. There's a lot of latent kind of cost there.
That's actually an interesting topic too, for maybe a different time, but around like how companies should do layoffs the right way and think about the people who remain. But people might look at like founders of today might look at what you get a box from a culture perspective and say that was 2015, right?
Yeah.
Like does that sort of stuff still work today? Like what would you say for a company, an early stage company, how do they build a great culture?
I'm not saying it was us. I'm saying it's an awful coincidence that after we started rolling out these programs, you start to see more and more of these programs at Walmart, Amazon, all the big folks start rolling out more and more programs to treat their people better.
Mm.
Uh, I won't take full credit for it, but I have to say, if you go back in the timeline, like there's awful coincidences there. So at the end of the day, I still feel very good about it. And I think those programs continue in a lot of those places. So I think they're finding that it's probably good business to treat folks well.
Aren't a lot of the companies today though too, or at least the tech companies, they seem like they pulled back on a lot of their benefits, right?
Yeah.
It's much more of an employer's market versus employee market, and they sort of pulled back. Is that accurate or?
I think that's accurate. And what I feel like I thought a lot about this. It's like it ebbs and flows, but it the general trajectory is up and to the right of in general of what benefits are provided to employees. Sometimes people go overboard and it's like you're getting on-site free haircuts and it's like, oh, do we really need that? And they pull back a bit. But in general, if you look at probably what was available now versus 15 years ago in your typical office, you know, I'd say case in point, like it was wild when Google in like the early 2000s provided snacks and like lunch and free food to their employees. People are like, "What? Why would you ever do that?" But now it's kind of normal. Even like non-tech companies, yeah, they'll whip out the free lunch once in a while, and they have a snack aisle, drinks on site. That's become more normal, I think.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think the trend line towards that is something that has definitely changed for the better.
That's a better way to say it, trend line, because maybe it's not up and to the right. Because someone who's listening to this is probably like, "We don't get any of that from our company." But in general, the trend line, I think it's going in the right direction.
They feel like they don't get any of that, but they actually probably do. They just don't know. It's not quite as they're still getting so much more than someone got 10 years ago, as an example.
Yeah.
So you gave a pretty famous TED talk around like the confessions of a recovering micromanager. Um, Walk us through like what it meant to be a micromanager and why did you recover from that? And like what were the big changes? Like how did you realize you were a micromanager, and why did you think you needed to change? Because when you built, I think when you gave the TED talk, you'd already built two really successful companies. So like why change, right? You clearly had something that was working for you.
I just felt like as an entrepreneur, it's your baby. It's like you started it, you had this vision, and when it starts to work, you're like, yes, and like this is how I imagined it. And these were all the individual details I imagined, which you should still hold. But then it comes to a point where you don't know everyone's name in the office and you don't know kind of what individually every single soul in the company does from 9 to 5 or 9 to whatever. And I think at that point in time, you start to burn yourself out if you're like micromanaging. And probably more importantly, you're going to burn them out. Cause like, there's like this study where it's like, I think the UK government did a study and they followed around nurses and it was like, they put these activity trackers on them. And like, at the end of this shift, they asked, "How do you feel? Are you tired?" The people who felt the most fatigued and burned out weren't the people that actually moved the most, according to the activity tracker. They were the ones that were most micromanaged,
Yeah.
and so it's actually counterproductive. So, you know, there's a balance, right? Because it can't be a free for all either, and you have to stick true to the vision. But at the same time, it's like you got to pick and choose your battles. I think.
And how do you get good at that, right? I mean, I think you said in the talk, right, that like you start at the bottom, you get good at something, then you get promoted, then you lose control, and then you still think you have to own that outcome. So you're micromanaging and you're essentially removing someone's sense of agency from them. And those are the people that get burned out because you're removing their agency. You're essentially doing their job and yours. Like, what are the behaviors that you would kill first to really grow into a fantastic manager?
The ability to parse out what really matters and what makes you feel good, it's really hard because even to this day, I'm not a fully recovered. I'm still recovering, right? Sometimes I see a deck and I'm like, I don't, not commas, but I'm like, I don't like that font. I don't, I don't like that color. Can we make this move this like clicks this way? I sometimes have to check myself. I'm like, no one's gonna sign up or not sign up to be a customer or invest or not invest because they were like, "Damn, did you see these fonts? Yeah. Oh, wow. Like the spacing was perfect, you know? It's like so there's some things. Now, if it's like a mishmash of fonts and it's like it looks amateurish, right, you gotta do that. You gotta make sure that it looks good. But to a certain extent, you gotta make sure what really matters and as a founder, dive deep on those things.
Well, maybe so. Actually, maybe I meant like what really matters. How do you set that out then for a company to say, hey, like, these are the things we care about. So it's like maybe saying, hey, like you have to be detail oriented. I'm not going to tell you exactly what that means. It doesn't mean use this exact font. It just means that everything needs to be consistent. Or like, how do you set the ground rules for what great is, so you don't have to enforce like specific rules?
That's a very good question. So we like what was interesting was it was like in some ways we started to bifurcate oftentimes conflated terms like goals, mission, purpose. And to a certain degree, you could say probably they're analogous. It's like, they're probably one and the same. But actually, at least at Box, I felt like our goal was to meet our quarterly earnings targets. Our mission to this day, like I still remember it, help the world stock up and save, and there's like a double entendre there of help the world, stock up and save, and then the purpose was actually that drove all of us was like trying to show that like even a company with such a large physical employee base who does it like what we did like can do it in a little bit of a kinder way. So but that purpose was never on the wall. Like we never but then if you went into a meeting, even if you're in the finance team and you're like, guys, I know how to save $25 million next year. You cut the benefits for people in fulfillment centers. Like you would get laughed out of that conference room, even though it's not a stated rule or it's not on the wall.
Hmm. So it just sort of builds itself up in a sense, and like people just know.
They cue off for you. I'm sure Adam for you, like, there's certain things when they're like, in some ways it's like, Adam never told me I couldn't do it. I'm pretty sure like Adam and all his lieutenants, like pretty sure they wouldn't make this decision, and so that's what, queuing off of you as a leader, I think, or as any leader, I think that there's a natural tendency to do that.
How do you as a leader make sure you're influencing everybody without getting in the way? And even more so, like doing this, do you have to be in person to do it, or can you do it remote?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I do believe in a hybrid.
Mm.
I do think in general, going back to the morale of people living their life outside of work, I do I do believe in taking time. If you interviewed the 29-year-old me that was at Zynga, probably be like, no days off. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like, I do feel like with time coming back refreshed, sometimes you have better ideas, like another kind of run in you. I think all those things are good. It's a really hard question to answer. I feel like I don't know how like have you kind of tackled it with your? I feel like every entrepreneur tackles it to a certain degree.
You have to like we try at Trillion Chore, my company, right, to talk all the time about we do a monthly performance reviews of each person, and we do a monthly all hands. In each of those, we always talk about our cultural values and how to do things in the way that we believe is really valuable. And I think it slowly percolates. It's not perfect, but gets
Mm,
through. We're also fully remote, so that makes it a little bit harder to do those things. But I think the pros outweigh the cons personally of remote
yeah,
versus in person. But
yeah. I think it's always a balance, right? Aren't most answers in life like a balance? It's rare that the extremes are the right answer. It's like some days I'm just like I don't need to commute in an office. I've got 12 hours of work and 3 hours of time, and like I just gotta hack through this. Other days, I'm like, dude, we need some brainstorming here, and like that energy of getting in people in a room and calling BS on that idea, but loving this. That also helps too. So I think it's somewhere in the middle.
yeah, totally fair. So okay, so going back to Box in transition, right? So Box bankruptcy, ton of issues. How long did you stick around before you left, go to the World Economic Forum, do all of that, then start Pelago?
Yeah, I stayed until they fired me. So it's like what a interesting journey arc. It's like you founded the company, and at the end of the day, you get the call that like you're gone. It wasn't a bad call because it was it was what it was like, but it was still like a pretty sobering call. You're like, like
Yeah, that had been your identity for 10 years. I mean, like that's
oh yeah, and I used to say like I wanted to be the last person off the ship. That was my stated goal until I was forced off the ship, closer to the end of it. So I think it was just an arc. So now I like to say, unfortunately, I've done layoffs, I've been fired, I've been laid off. It's like I've like that full arc and I've lived it, like, on both sides. I know how it feels on both sides, and it's not great on either side. And so that was, to your point, a little bit of the genesis of this company is, like, doesn't matter if you're leaving a job voluntarily or being laid off or being, like, forcefully fired, the people on the other side don't enjoy it, and you as a person being displaced also certainly don't enjoy it. And so what I found is that there's all this infrastructure as you're onboarding. There's like benefit consultants, comp consultants, like PEOs, like payroll. There's a whole world of infrastructure, but the moment you leave your job, it becomes like point solutions. It's like, and like a random IT guy is like mailing you like a FedEx box to mail your stuff back. And sometimes your stuff gets shut off, but other things you're like, oh man, it's been 6 months and this thing still works. And it's like, there's a, it's just so like disorganized that what if we made like a very single, I guess in cybersecurity world, like a single pane solution of just like everything when it comes to offboarding, not just riffs, but even when people voluntarily leave.
yeah, just get it and do it all the right way. I mean, that's part of what Chore is obviously trying to solve is like how do we build this sort of factory for operations to just get this done
Exactly.
every single day and do it the right way.
Exactly. And so chore, it's one of those things where that's why you call the company a chore. It's like, well, it's like, it's a chore for back office folks. It is. The other thing, in some ways it's like offboarding, it's for HR business partners. I bet it's their number one stated like chore that they don't want to do.
But they have to. The thing with chores is you have to do them. You don't like them, so find a way to hand it off, ideally. But so go and talk really briefly about like Plago, like how that all like how that idea got started and why you're like this is gonna be your next act.
Yeah. So I connected with my co-founder over now about 3 years ago. And, we started Pelgo earlier this year. But what we both found in our journeys, him to a much larger degree, was this pain of offboarding. Again, voluntarily or involuntary offboarding. Because people remember 20 million Americans, this is a real number. 20 million Americans get discharged from their job every year, voluntarily or involuntarily, every single year. It's nuts. Now, a lot of those are seasonal or hourly workers, but yeah, you're like, okay,
That's like a lot of change people are going through every. Speaking of change, that's 20 million people going through major change every year.
every year. I believe it because my co-founder, who co-founded it and was the CEO of Cognizant, they had 300,000 people by the time he left as CEO, and like 10% natural attrition or like force and unforced. It's like offboarding 30,000 people a year.
It's crazy.
Like you pin a few Cognizants together, suddenly at 20 million doesn't seem so far off. But what we found is that like it was always this painful process for everyone involved. And so how do we make it better? Like we make it easier so HR business partners have digital tools so that they can kind of help answer questions without receiving like hundreds of emails from former employees about decently mundane questions that they could have found themselves, but they no longer have access to their own internal intranet. All the way to outplacement, so coaching and career pathing for those who are displaced like forcefully, like via a reduction in force, and then even severance administration and all this other stuff that we're building. It's like it's like this single platform that we hope folks will increasingly call like when people are leaving again voluntarily or when they're rift.
Yeah, no, it's so important, especially given all the changes that we're going to be going through with like the AI stuff. Speaking of some of the jobs, right? Founders in 2026, I think, are really torn between like AI is going to kill everything I'm building, and AI is this gift that I need to use it everywhere all the time. Where are you in that?
I think AI will eventually be that thing that everyone uses every time, just like the internet. It's going to power things. There would be like applications of it that you won't think that it's AI, but it's powering kind of like this service that may not be incredibly AI, sounding AI-ish, like, but then it's also powered like the internet, right? They're like, you use devices all the time, but you don't sometimes overtly think like whatever your HVAC system is powered by the internet, but yeah, it is, when you control it, it theoretically is. I think there's going to be, I'm not, for what it's worth, I'm not like super doom and gloom, like everyone's going to be UBI. We're going to sit at home, collect checks via mail, and just like that's how life will be. But I think, unfortunately, there's going to be very localized pain. For example, you look at the steel industry in America, like you can say in general, America is so much more prosperous now than we were in the 70s and 80s. So much more by almost every single metric. But you go to some of those towns and those Rust Belt communities and you say that, you're going to be chased out of town.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be same in certain communities, in certain pockets of white collar work.
Yeah, I mean, that's really true. In the same way that those steel workers had trouble retraining themselves and finding new jobs, I think there will be a lot of people who have trouble retraining themselves and getting new jobs. I mean, you need a flexible mindset, arguably, to really get good at this stuff, be willing to try new things. So kind of one or two last quick questions. Like you made you made money, you've lost money, you started a bunch of businesses, about a bankruptcy. What does success like mean to you now? And how is it different than like what it meant 10 years or 20 years ago for you?
Success now means just having a fulfilling day where at the end of the day, you're like, I think I did a little bit of good. I enjoyed what I did. It's not without kind of the undulations of being an entrepreneur, but like I'm doing what I want in life. Even if sometimes you choose that path that is very painful, as is being an entrepreneur, but I chose it, and so a lot of days I that's how I measure success. It's like, yeah, I'm doing what I love, working with people I genuinely care about and think are smart and cool. I feel like that's pretty successful. So might not be everyone's bar, but like I know for me, it's like I feel good.
How did that change? How is that different from like your 25-year-old self or 35-year-old self?
25-year-old self, it's like if I'm not commuting via Lamborghini, and if I'm not flying on a G6, like by the time I'm like 31, what a disaster my life was, because it's just different levels of like, you're like, at the end of the day, the things that matter most, like you it's hard to buy. And so that's, I guess, just maturing over time, you figure these things out.
Except now, I mean, now aren't you a board member of McLaren? So like you like you're crushing it. Like,
You can say that, yeah, yeah. Sorry to the advisory team there. It's yes, I would change it. Lamborghini. You want a McLaren. That's what.
right. And so your 25-year-old self would have wanted that all the time, but now your 45-ish-year-old self actually like probably, I hope, has McLarens or at least can go drive them all the time whenever they want. And so still pretty good. So Chieh, how can people find you? If they want to learn more about Pelago, how can they get their business help, learn more about micromanaging or hopefully not micromanaging, building great culture? Where can they learn more?
If you can still stand me after hearing my voice for the last 30-40 minutes, then if you want to hear more of my voice, I've got two How I Built This episodes, TED.com or Pelago, Pelgo.com. Look to see if it's interesting for you and your business. We just help treat folks right on the way out and take care of those people who are displaced, voluntarily or involuntarily. It's our job to take care of them. So if you're interested in finding out more, hit us up.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on. Your time is so precious. So thank you for spending some of it with me.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam.
From big law associate to mobile game founder to CEO of a $900 million public company that filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, Chieh is the guy laughing about all of it. He came back again and again and continues to build. What he's proved over and over is one quite stubborn thing. The founder job is not a straight line, and the ones who stay in it aren't the ones who got lucky. They're the ones who kept coming back. And for those listening, please like and leave a comment and share this with your friends. The more we can learn to build great businesses together and have more successful entrepreneurs, the better world we'll have.